the background screening industry really serves a purpose that I don't think gets fully acknowledged by the general public, which is fine, but really we exist to really help ensure safety in workplaces and communities for people. And, whenever you hear about something going wrong, it's always, well, how could we have predicted this? Or, were there any indications? And not that background screening is a perfect predictor of every future happenstance, of course, but I think it's a really important exercise to go through, especially in employment and tenant situations. Just really seeing the positive impact that background screening can actually have has been part of why I've stayed. I just find it to be a very interesting industry in general, just with the amount of different pieces of legislation that exist.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another edition of Behind the Screens, conversation with background screening pros. And it's a real pleasure today to welcome Kelly Ubell to the program. She's a general counsel. She is a past chair of PBSA. She is a person who has fantastic expertise really on every aspect of background screening. I'll let her talk about what all those aspects are. Kelly, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Les. I appreciate it.
Well, this is really great. I've known you for a long time. You've been so involved in PBSA, and you are just a sort of the model for what an in-house counsel should be, and you just know so much about background screening. And I've been with you on Hill Days. I think I was with you on California Hill Day. You were in charge of making sure I didn't say things that were too outrageous. Right. And that was so much fun. So tell us, what are you doing now? What's your current
Yeah.
position?
Yeah. So I work as general counsel for Assurant. Oversee our legal and compliance teams here that we have in house. And really, my job is to support basically every function in the organization. So contracts, litigation, marketing, sales, IT, partnering with the systems. Really just making sure that we're operating the best we can and really being that support system for the organization. That's mainly what I focus on.
Well, you've been general counsel there, and what do you find most interesting about it, about that particular job? Because you're a lawyer, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. So I honestly, especially being in this space in the legal field and especially having the compliance team oversight, it's really just the constant changes that we experience every single day. It feels like in this industry, all the new challenges that are presented legislatively through litigation trends, through the regulatory developments. There really is no shortage of opportunities to learn something new and to tackle something new each day. So really helps keep it fresh and interesting. And I work with a great group of people. So it's just each day is really kind of a fun new adventure in a way.
Well, I mean, you said three things that are really important. First of all, I mean, the breadth of what you're involved in, marketing, IT, AI, production. I mean, that must be fascinating. You touch every aspect of the background screening profession.
Hmm. That's right.
And then you also mentioned that the one thing that doesn't change is that there's always change every day, right? I mean, it's just bombarded daily. I take it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to describe it. I mean, it always amazes me in this industry because it's been around for obviously a long time. And I don't think the core law and concepts have necessarily really changed, at least at the federal level. But it never ceases to amaze me the brand new arguments you hear about the law and how it should be applied and interpreted. So that's really one of the things that I like the most, actually, because it really keeps you on your toes and again keeps you learning and evolving as those theories evolve. So that's what I find to be the most interesting.
And then, of course, there's Congress can pass laws, and there's federal agencies, and there's 50 states, and there's, 3,200 counties or whatever number we all bandy about. How do you keep track? Because all of those can be doing things any day, and sometimes and often they conflict.
Yeah, that is obviously one of the big challenges that really we have to deal with, especially as in-house counsel. I think it is just tracking where everything is trending on the state and local level in particular. The local level gets to be really challenging because they like to just pass laws and maybe they go into effect same day or without any fanfare. So you're really kind of left trying to catch up as best you can. But I do have a bunch of news alerts and articles and firms that I work with and rely on. And then I think PBSA, of course, the Government Relations Committee, does an excellent job tracking impactful legislation. And so that's been a really great place to learn about what's coming next and really kind of unpack that complex legislation.
Well, that's really interesting. You're on the tip of the spear, I mean, because every day something can come out of left field, and you must have a system set up to every single day to see what's incoming. That's going to affect your firm and your clients and your vendors and suppliers and relationships, right? I mean,
I mean, that's kind of how I start my day. Get a cup of coffee, start going through news alerts, see if anything is going to derail plans for the day or not from a legislative or regulatory perspective. And then kind of tackle all the usual day to day stuff. But yeah, that's really how I start my day. A cup of coffee and a bunch of news alerts.
and the third thing you said I thought was very interesting is that just having good people around you really helps. And so it sounds like you're really happy with your team and your coworkers and the organization, and that does a lot to put a pep in your step. I take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a very tenured team that I work with in the compliance department, excellent resources on the legal side. They're just a joy to work with all the time and get to see them occasionally when I go to Cleveland and visit the home office, and we have a lot of fun. So yeah, it's just been a great environment to be in. I think I'll be there for 8 years in May, and
Wow.
it's just been a really nice experience.
So I take it from what you said, you're remote. You're literally remote. You're somewhere in Minnesota, right?
Yeah,
Right.
somewhere in Minnesota. I just lurk around. Yeah.
Right. And which one of the 10,000 lakes are you near? Right.
Gosh, I don't even know. That's horrible.
Right.
Out in, Maple Grove, Minnesota, so I'm sure there's some lakes around me somewhere.
So you're pretty close to Minneapolis and the Twins and Target
Yeah.
Stadium. Okay, that's great. Well, I mean, it sounds like then for a while we'll get to that in more detail. But in addition to all that, you also had all your responsibilities at PBSA. I mean, that's kind of take your day and then triple it, right? If you had your PBSA responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah, especially when I was on the board. I had the pleasure of being on the board for several years, served as chair, and that truly was one of my favorite experiences I've had in the industry. It's just you get to be involved in so many different aspects of the association, really think about where we want to go strategically as an association, and then you get to just work with amazing people. So I guess we go back to the theme of people again. Especially in this industry, when I joined the industry, I came from a pretty competitive industry, electronic discovery, computer forensics. And then my first conference I went to, I was like, wait, you guys are all just friends? Like you hang out and talk? That's so nice. So it's really working with your colleagues and people that are inferior competitors, or it could be a more difficult relationship, but everyone's just so pleasant to work with. And, we all learn from each other. And so the PBSA work has been really rewarding.
Well, we'll circle back to a little bit more about your career path and other things. But as long as we're talking about PBSA, as we were discussing, you were the chair 2021, 2022.
Yeah, yeah, we had to look that up. I forgot.
Right, right. Boy, talk about time bandits. What did you
Yeah.
like most about that? I mean, being on the board and then being the chair.
Yeah, I think it was a great way to really learn about the true challenges that can face the association, how to approach it in a way that may be different than you might approach it working for a private employer. And we had some interesting challenges. We had some of the California date of birth redaction issues that popped up. We really were still trying to blend kind of into that true global association. We had transformed into PBSA a few years prior, but really just even simple things like managing everyone's schedules across the globe, making sure everyone had accessible times to meet and discuss. And we had some colleagues that really bent their schedules very flexibly, which was great. But just some of those aspects of just trying to blend everyone together and make sure we were representing the association the best we could was great. And then we did a lot of work on strategic planning. to make sure we had a path forward that made sense for the association. So it was truly just a really rewarding time.
And what was your path to chair? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate because I started in the industry working with some very fantastic people like Murray Paquette, Melissa Sorensen, and several others. And so they very much encouraged getting involved in the association right away, going to conferences. And so I really started out on the government relations side and started with the committee, eventually was co-chair of that committee, and then moved on to the board from there.
And for those who don't know, I mean, from my viewpoint, being on the government relations committee is the hardest job because you're dealing with state and federal. And I'm not sure if at that time we actually had full time outside attorneys or not, but that always you didn't. Okay. So basically, the volunteers acted as the attorney for the unpaid attorney for the association in addition to your day job.
Yeah, we had federal support, but we didn't necessarily have that same state contracted partner that we then implemented shortly thereafter. So I remember I drafted a lot of the responses to various legislation, a lot of letters. I would call council members. We had a ban the box task force where we developed the association's really first talking points and positions on that law. So it was definitely a lot of work, even with all the wonderful partners we have in place, of course, because it's just so much legislation to tackle. But it was a really great learning experience.
And I'm not sure people appreciate the effort you and people like you made on your own time, following legislation, drafting responses, talking to the legislators, that whole layer of life above and beyond your own personal life and then your professional life with your employer, right? I mean, it's just, yeah. People in the industry don't realize, how much what the debt that's owed to people like you who do these things really on your own time. How long were you on the board? Then what was your path there? You got on the board.
I think I was on the board for 7 or 8 years,
Wow.
somewhere along that line. Hopefully, I'm right on that. I'm sure I'll be background checked and fact checked on that. But yeah, so I started off with the board, and then a few years in, got voted into the pathway for the board. So you start secretary, treasurer, chair elect, and then into chair, and then immediate past chair, and then you roll off and have the FOMO of what's going on because you've been so involved for so many years, and now
Right.
it's just done. So yeah, it was a long path, but a great one.
Oh, that's great. And I'm always reminded that no good deed goes unpunished. So you do all these wonderful things, but it takes time. I mean, it's just and the commitment's unbelievable. How has PBSA influenced your career and your time in the industry?
I think it's been incredibly impactful in such a positive way. I am so grateful I got involved in PBSA right away because I got to make so many personal connections that have been really, really helpful. I connect with a lot of my colleagues and other CRAs, and we obviously don't share anything secret sauce, but it's the common things that impact us. How have you thought about approaching this? What about this idea? It's a really great way to be able to bounce some ideas off of people that have so much experience in the space. So that's been really lovely. And then obviously staying more in the know and up to date on what's going on through government relations has been super helpful. So I think from a professional development standpoint and just at a credibility standpoint, it's very helpful to be involved in PBSA. So it's been one of the better decisions I made joining the industry was getting involved for sure.
And also, I think you alluded to it, but it's also the personal relationships, right? The friendships and the contacts and some of the lifelong connections that you make, right? I mean, that's been an experience of a lot of people. And same for you
Yeah.
as well, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the best parts. It's just the friendships, and I love going to conferences and seeing everyone. It's like a weird mini high school reunion almost each time, but it's something you get really excited for and you look forward to, and then you're there, and there's so much to learn and so many people to talk to, and it's just a really exciting time.
All right, two-part question then. What's your favorite part of the official conference agenda? And what is your favorite part of the, how should we say, the unofficial conference agenda for Kelly?
Officially, I do enjoy the sessions. I try to make it to as many as possible. I think that the folks that organize the conference have done a great job at putting a pretty wide variety of topics out there for people to sit through and really learn from. So I am one of those people that enjoys enjoys going to the sessions. And then the unofficial parts is really just seeing everyone, maybe having a glass of wine or something and some friends and just catching up on how everyone's been doing. And yeah, again, just kind of forging those friendships and personal connections.
Oh, that's great. And you've been a presenter before, I assume, on
Long
PBSA.
time ago, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually
exactly.
presenting it as, yeah, yes, presenting.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. On I assume a myriad of topics. So, all right. Can you touch so much in what you do?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely presented at a few conferences, including about being in-house counsel and how in-house counsel can support everyone within the business. And then I do a lot of thought leadership and presentation work in my normal job, which I really enjoy. I like being in front of clients, and it's fun to just share your knowledge and to take their challenging situations and listen and learn from them as well. So yeah, one of my favorite parts of my job.
Oh, that's great. So, going back to your job, what was your career path to get to where you are now? Can you describe that in general terms?
Yeah, yeah. So I started in the e-discovery and computer forensic space while I was attending law school and spent a few years there. And I had no idea that background screening was even a thing or what it was all about. But then I was kind of looking for a different career path, still within the legal space, of course, and happened to see a posting for an international compliance officer role at Verifications Inc. way back in the day and worked there for a few years. Really, really enjoyed it, learned a ton, and then worked in the legal department for a larger CRA following an acquisition, and then moved to a small CRA to start their legal department there before landing at Assurant, where I started the legal department here at Assurant and really focused on transforming the compliance team. So I really enjoy getting to feel like you're impacting change and adding value to the organization you're working for. And each stop along the way in the industry has really provided just valuable opportunities to learn and grow. A lot of core competencies gained at each stop. So I've been grateful for every position I've had and really just try to make the most of each place I go.
So, one thing I like to ask, because when people watch this, it's always fun to learn new things and people's perspectives. What's a lesson that you learned early in your career that pops in mind that has stuck with you? Something that was like a aha moment and something that you still think about today?
That's a great question. I definitely learned a lot of things over my professional career, but I would probably say that a lesson I learned early on, thankfully, even prior to that joining the industry, was just that I don't know everything. So I think when you're emerging out of law school, you're in your early 20s, you feel that sense of accomplishment and like I can run the world kind of feeling. And it's great. It's lovely, but it's also important to acknowledge and recognize that people have an immense amount of life and work experience that can be incredibly insightful to learn from. And so whether it's their own mistakes that they've made or accomplishments. And so I learned it was really important to listen, to learn, and to really kind of lean on the experiences of people that have walked that path that I'm trying to go down versus just coming in there thinking I know everything. Thankfully, I think I learned that pretty early, and it's something that I've always tried to be really mindful about.
I mean, that's a great life lesson. One of my favorite books is the Stephen Covey books, The Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. And that's definitely one of the habits. Listen before you want to be heard. So listening. And I also just love the observation that the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Right?
That's so true.
You think you've got it mastered, and suddenly you realize, oh my God, there's whole areas of that. What do I do with this? All
Yeah.
right. All right.
Yeah, every
Uh,
day's a new opportunity, that's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so there's just never a lack of opportunity to learn and progress. So you said when you were in law school, like most of us, I've never heard of background screening until, a little late in life and certainly not in law school. What kept you attracted to the industry? What do you like about it? What pulls you to it or keeps you in it?
I think it's just how important the work is that we do. Not to sound self important at all, but the background screening industry really serves a purpose that I don't think gets fully acknowledged by the general public, which is fine. But really, we exist to really help ensure safety in workplaces and communities for people. And, whenever you hear about something going wrong, it's always, well, how could we have predicted this? Or, were there any indications? And Not that background screening is a perfect predictor of every future happenstance, of course, but I think it's a really important exercise to go through, especially in employment and tenant situations. Just really seeing the positive impact that background screening can actually have has been part of why I've stayed. I just find it to be a very interesting industry in general, just with the amount of different pieces of legislation that exist. The developments in litigation I find very interesting, and so it really does keep you on your toes every day and really challenges you to think more creatively as well. And that's not always my number one strong suit, just coming out of, yeah, very type A lawyer. I generally like things more by the book. So really this industry has forced me to really develop some new professional skills too. And so it's been a great experience overall and part of the reason I stay.
Well, one of the games we play is called Changes and Challenges. We don't want to spend too much time on substantive stuff with background screening, but just based on your experience, top ahead, no more than 30 seconds, what has been the biggest changes you've seen in the industry? And what do you think the one or two biggest challenges are?
Yeah, I think this is probably a popular answer, but technology. So,
Okay.
when I started from 2011 to now, the industry has evolved so quickly. So the technology leveraged has been really impactful to making things, hopefully like better quality, more efficient. And I think we're going to see a lot of legislation tackling various aspects of technology that's going to be impactful. So I think that's probably one of the biggest items. And then, of course, we're in such an unknown regulatory environment right now in general. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how that continues to develop.
So when you look back at your career, not that your career is over, you have a long time to go, but to date, what kind of comes to mind or brings a smile to your face in terms of a moment or an accomplishment that that you're proud of, or that something that stands out in your mind that you go, God, that was a good one.
Yeah, I think it's really starting the legal department at two separate CRAs and being able to provide some more structure and guidance and again be that support system for people. I really enjoy that role. And then I have in a couple CRAs now navigated the PBSA accreditation process and then from start to finish there. And obviously tracking ongoing monitoring with the standards. And I'm a huge fan of the accreditation program. So being able to really place compliance at the forefront of decision making, kind of changing the culture around that has been really something I'm proud of. And from, I guess, a broader industry standpoint, obviously proud of serving on the board, which we've talked about today, continuing to be very actively involved in the association. And so those are some of the higher level accomplishments that I feel pretty proud about.
And I think you're a natural leader too, because being going through these committees and going through the board process and eventually being chair, I mean, you're dealing with so many different people and they're all volunteers, and yet you were able to bring out a unified consensus and get things done. That must feel good as well.
Yep, definitely one of the best parts. There's a lot of tough conversations you have on the board. And then the most important thing is to, even if something doesn't go the direction you think it should, is understand the importance of supporting it once you leave that room, that virtual room nowadays. But really just making sure that, you're speaking kind of with one voice on the same page is really important. And we were able to get through a lot of difficult discussions on the board, not just during my tenure as chair, but throughout the whole time. And I think emerging from those tough discussions with, great ideas and strategies for the association while all remaining very cordial and friendly. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, but I think we all did a really good job at that.
And that's a really great concept because in any organization, there's tough discussions, decisions have to be made. And once the decision is made, it may not be the decision you would make if you were in charge or whatever, but once it's out, if you're part of the organization, you got to jump on board, right? I mean, you have to
Right.
support that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's some people who actually have lives outside of screening. I mean, if
I
that's
don't know,
possible.
but
So Kelly, tell us what do you do when you're not doing all of the many things you've done and are doing now in terms of hobbies or interests or things you do for fun?
sure. Yeah, I really enjoy spending time with my 4-year-old son, and of course my husband and puppy. Well, he's not a puppy, but a dog. We have a great little family unit. But my son's very into dinosaurs and has an active imagination. He is just very sweet and lovely to be around. So he is definitely where a lot of my time and attention goes to. I have gotten back into reading for fun, which is a concept I didn't think I'd ever get back to after law school and just how much work, all I do is read all day basically at work. So it's been nice to get back into that. I have a neighborhood book club I'm a part of. The Minnesota, I mean, geez, it's so cold most of the time in the winter. It's hard to find really fun things to go out and do. So we really just try and find opportunities to connect with other people, generally indoors when it's very cold. So meat raffles, bingo, things like that is pretty popular Minnesota pastime.
All right, so I got to unpack a couple of things there. When you were the April 2024 Volunteer of the Month, you were reading Spare by Prince Henry. What are you reading now?
Yeah, I actually didn't even finish that because I just felt like it was kind of a difficult read, actually. So I should probably go back and finish that. But we are reading Tell Me What You Did Then is the new book we're reading as part of my book club. It's kind of a thriller, true crime podcast type thriller. And there's several other books that I probably should not admit I read professionally in this podcast. Some of the romantic series butts that are very popular on Instagram and TikTok. So I'm sure people could figure it out. But those are just fun to read to turn your brain off
Well,
completely.
we're all entitled to our guilty pleasures, so that's
Yeah.
so a novel or two is not a bad thing. All right, so you said the word meat raffle. I have never heard, and maybe that's because I'm in California. What is a meat raffle?
Yeah, it turns out a lot of people don't know what meat raffles are, which I find hilarious because we brought it up a few years ago at a conference. It was kind of a meet the board session. And I mentioned it, and it turns out that people were just mind blown at this concept. So it's been kind of a running joke for the last few years. But you go to a bar and you get a raffle ticket. Usually you pay like $1 or something for it. There's, a container of packaged meat, usually from like the local butcher or something. And then if your number is called, you go up to the container of meat and you pick which meat you want. So whether it's like burgers or bacon or chicken. And so the tricky part is if you play it when it's warm outside is figuring out how to keep your meat cold while you remain at the bar. But in the winter, it's great because you just can go stick it outside by your car and it stays cold until you're ready to go home. So it's a pretty fun concept, but it is a strange one if you're not used to hearing about it for sure.
So I've heard of Minnesota nice, and now I've heard of Minnesota crazy. All right, folks, you heard it here. You want to find out more about meat raffles? Get hold of Uebel, and she will tell you all about them. All right.
And definitely, I've ignited a few people's passions for the concept of meat raffles. So I get a few texts every now and again from people who've experienced it and said it was fun.
And the part that may trigger some interest is that you apparently do these meat raffles at a bar.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
of course. Where else are you gonna do it?
All right. Where they serve adult beverages of some sort. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So that's great. And so there's a part of the podcast we play fun facts. Do you care to share something about yourself that people may not know that is completely unrelated to background screening, other than your participation in meat raffles?
Some of my fun prior to deciding I would go to law school and become a lawyer, I really wanted to be a writer and particularly a romance novel writer. So maybe that's why I have an interest in some of these other books. But I mean, I grew up reading romance novels by a whole bunch of different authors and just really fell in love with the genre, which makes sense. I guess that's the goal of the books. I had actually started my first book before going to law school, and it's been sidelined ever since. So one of these days, I really would love to pick that back up and actually finish it. Not that I would ever put it out there for general distribution, but just, feel a personal accomplishment writing it. And then I have actually started just a children's book for my son. Again, just for him, not like about trying to change the world here with the written word, but he just loves reading so much. So I thought it'd be really fun to write a story that's kind of about him and for him. And so I'm hoping to finish that by next Christmas.
Oh, that's fantastic. Boy, I mean, if you feel like it, I'd encourage you to put it on Amazon and, whatever. I mean, people I think would really enjoy
He
it.
likes
All
it.
right. Oh, that's great. Well, I do hope you get some time to write the book. Do you have a chance to watch some of the treatments of some of the books you like on Netflix or some of the streaming services? Are there good series out there that kind of reflect that genre?
I don't know necessarily tied to any sort of books that I've read, but there's a couple shows I really enjoy, but they're not tied to any of the books. Like Shrieking, I think is a fantastic series on Apple TV, but again, not tied to any of the books I've been reading. I think they're going to make one of the series into a show eventually, but we'll see if that actually happens.
Well, Shrinking is really fun. Harrison Ford is just a riot. I just saw him in the new Captain America movie and, the last remake of Indiana Jones. I didn't think he would be someone who could be intriguing, but he does, he's funny. I mean, it's a really
Yeah.
good show.
Yeah, it's great. Highly recommend.
So this has been great. We've covered a lot of topics. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to share with us?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I feel like everyone has probably learned enough about me today.
Right. Well, this is great, and I'm just very pleased you've come on the show and just given your experience in this industry, and you're not even close to being done with your career. I mean, you're just in the middle of it. But what advice do you have for someone who might either be thinking of entering the profession or is in it but not quite sure they want to stay, or they're maybe in year 4 or 5 and they feel stuck, and they came to you and wanted some career advice? What would you say?
Yeah, I think it depends on really definition of the profession. So I guess I will focus on, from a law perspective and a lawyer perspective, especially if you're going to be in house. One of the best things to do is just learn how to think with the business hat on. If you lead with a no every single time, they'll stop going to you. And then that's when you have a problem. So it's really trying to be that partner with the folks that are trying to move the business along and figure out how to best mitigate risk while also trying to help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve. And then for the background screening side of things, just joining the industry or just being in the industry generally, I think we've talked a lot about it today, but PBSA is just such a great way to get involved, to meet people, to grow your network, and to really just learn a lot. And you can never be done learning in the background screening industry because there's always something new or some variation of something you haven't thought of before. So really just making as many connections as possible and trying to have some brainstorming sessions every now and again with people that you can learn a lot about how they've thought about approaching something. Those would be my pieces of advice. Excuse me.
Yeah, I really like your comment. I mean, you can't always lead with no, but you got to come up with a solution to help people. What about folks in the screening industry who are not lawyers? But I see this with a lot of firms that folks will be in a compliance role. It's not an official term, but sort of basic compliance. There's a certain level of compliance that a person can do without a law degree before it has to get escalated. What's your advice to someone in that role? I mean, a non-lawyer who is doing some compliance, oftentimes in terms of reportability of criminal records.
Yeah, I think leveraging the resources that PBSA makes available is incredibly important. We put people through the core certificate and the advanced certificate on the compliance team where I work today. They get a lot out of it and they learn a lot. And it's a nice kind of self-guided, self-timed adventure, if you will. There are a lot of law firms you can work with. They may have tools to help you track items or are happy to assist in answering questions. And there's firms of all kind of sizes and billing amounts. So there's tons of great lawyers in the space that are always willing to obviously help. And then again, making those connections because you may make a connection with someone in a compliance team in a different company. And again, not that you're going to share anything confidential or secret, but if you're wondering maybe how they've tackled common names or how they go about reporting certain types of crimes, how do they generally treat certain things? People are usually pretty willing to share their experience and how they've approached things in the past. And so that's a great way to learn as well.
One of the things that is interesting before you use the word secret sauce and so forth, and I guess I've sort of come to the conclusion, and I know what you meant. People share, but you don't. Certain things are sort of confidential to the firm. But I mean, it's just been my observation that there's less and less secret sauce in this world. I mean, sure, your client list might be secret, your pricing or whatever. It's like we all end up doing things out of necessity, somewhat the same way because we're all subject to the same rules and realities, right? I mean, at some point, I think you go to these meetings, you find out, oh, you have the same problem. Oh, and your solution similar to ours. They may have a different take on it or something. Whatever problems we have, I think we all have, right?
Generally speaking, yes. Definitely, we're all faced with a lot of the same challenges. And I think that's where, colleagues are willing to share what they've done or maybe something they've tried that didn't work well. That's always valuable to
Yeah,
learn from
yeah.
too. And yeah, we all have a little bit of different experiences in the industry. And so we've all worked in a variety of environments, small, medium, large, company size wise. So yeah, you can really get a lot of interesting perspectives from people.
And maybe I'm just pontificating now, but what you mentioned about attending PBSA and making the contacts and serving and the professional contacts and personal contacts is just so important. What do you say to those people who say, well, I used to go when my firm was smaller. Now my firm has been acquired and through industry it calls consolidation or whatever, and now I'm not on the list of people who get to go. I mean, how do we solve that?
Yeah, that is a challenge because obviously being there in person is just such a different experience. But that what I found to be helpful, I'm not super active in them, but I know the community boards are very active on the PBSA site, and you can kind of pose a question out there. People will answer. You can start your networking that way. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great place where you just reach out and say, "Hi, I noticed we're both in the industry. Would love to connect. I've met folks that are in Minnesota, for example, that I've never worked with before and we've connected." Yeah, it's just probably those kind of places to start just to figure out even who to say hi to and who to start with. So those would probably be two good places to start.
Boy, that's a real gold star idea. I mean, going to the PBSA board, and that's a really, I didn't even thought of that. That's a great resource, and you put there, and it'd be great if people got involved. I mean, I'm telling people now, I say, even if you used to go and now you can't because you've been acquired, if this is your profession and you really care about it, then take the time off, take your PTO. And even if it's on your own dime, it's not the greatest thing, but you should still go. I mean, the connections and the opportunity to advance the industry are just augmented times a factor of whatever by actually being at the conference. Not everyone wants to take that advice, but that's what I would put out there. So, right.
I mean, it's tough when you have to choose between, family vacation or PBSA,
Well,
but kidding.
that's true.
I agree. I love PBSA, so I would fully go, even if my employer did not did not pay for it.
Well, Kelly, this has been a great discussion, and I know you have a lot to do. But before we end it, let me give you the floor for any final thoughts. The floor is yours.
Sure. I guess just closing with a thank you. Thank you to you for hosting this podcast. I've watched several of the episodes, and you've really spotlighted so many amazing, talented people, and it's been really fun to hear everyone's different journeys and perspectives. So I appreciate that, and probably say thank you to everyone that I've had the pleasure of working with over the last several years in the industry. Everyone has always been so kind and welcoming, and it really makes kind of life and this thing called work a bit more enjoyable when you enjoy the people around you. Yeah, again, encourage people that are newer to get involved in PBSA, try to make those connections. I think they can turn out to be really great friendships, and you never know what could happen from there. So I think it's just get involved, and thank you to everyone who's ever helped me with anything.
There you heard it, folks. We call you Ubell. Kelly, you've been a fantastic guest. There's just so many things to unpack about the conversation today, and you've said so many things that we couldn't even comment upon that really have me thinking, but we're a little limited by time. It'd be great to go 2 or 3 hours, but I think we're at the end of our time here. So, ladies and gentlemen, another great show. Our guest today, Kelly Ubell, who's just shed so much light and so many interesting things. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone attending this session of Behind the Screens. And we will see you next week with yet another podcast. Thank you. All right. That was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.